Hello, I am your host, Henry, and welcome to episode 3 of the In Our Bodies podcast, a podcast made by and for people of color who deal with disability, chronic illness, and or neurodivergence. But as I always say, formal diagnosis aside, if you've ever felt like your body-mind doesn't want to subscribe to what society has decided is normal, then this podcast celebrates you. Before we jump into the episode, just a little content warning. At 43 minutes and 45 seconds, the conversation leads towards a suicide mention. So if needed, when you get to that point, I would advise you to skip forward a minute. And with that, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. We have guest Veronica Louey on with us this episode. Her pronouns are she, her. She is of Chinese-Filipino descent, currently based in Toronto. Veronica has a love for literature. She has done some modeling and is currently interested in exploring traditional Chinese medicine. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm kind of excited about this.
Yes, kind of excited, kind of nervous. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
We're
All of
shaking
the
it off.
above.
Doing lots of giggling. Okay, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
When our guests feel comfortable, I always start off asking if they can, in their own words, explain a little bit about their disability or chronic illness. So
Sure.
if we can start there.
Yeah, so I am living with lupus nephritis, mainly SLE lupus, which is systemic lupus erythematosus. But I
Those
did
medical
also,
names, eh?
I know, right? Like I probably butchered it, but I also had CNS lupus, which is easier to say, it's central nervous system. So yeah, and I just received a kidney transplant.
Woo.
In the beginning, when I was first diagnosed, I was around 12, 13. I was able to be a patient at Sick Kids. I was first diagnosed with SLE lupus, which mainly affects like joints or like your skin, like stuff like that. It's obviously, it affects your immune system. And then it quickly transformed into CNS lupus, which is a little bit more rare and a little bit more severe because it affects your central nervous system. So I just essentially became a vegetable. Like I didn't even know my name. I couldn't recognize faces. I could not move. And I was hallucinating. That was a big thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I was just really not myself.
So were you essentially otherwise, I'm using quotations here, healthy before the age of 12, 13, and then it kind of
Yeah.
appeared?
Yeah. So it's funny because, you mentioned that I'm interested in TCM and
Which is traditional Chinese medicine.
yes.
Just for everybody.
And it was interesting because I was going through some therapy with a traditional Chinese medicine doctor who specializes in kidney, and she suspects that I had lupus way before the symptoms actually showed. And so what actually triggered it was I had an episode of shingles when I was like 12, because I was going through a lot of stuff, and I guess I got really stressed, and then I got shingles around my abdomen. And then I also noticed my left knee was like huge and swollen and painful, and it took me like 10 minutes to get up a flight of stairs. So my dad's like, there's something wrong, and fortunately he was tested for lupus, which came back negative, but he was like, and he kind of like put 2 and 2 together, got me to do a test, and then my lupus came back positive.
When did he get tested for lupus?
When he was about, I would say like 40, 45, mid 40s.
So it was quite lucky that, I don't know, in some part of his medical history, somebody suspected that he might have had it for you to even know about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, we do, on this podcast, we do like pre-interviews just to chat, and something that you've talked about is that people don't really know what lupus
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially back then too, because like lupus, I didn't even know what lupus was. I've never heard of it ever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I was very, very fortunate because we were also talking about this with my dad and I, how weird it is that lupus isn't kind of, because I told you before, lupus is also called the disease with a thousand faces,
Yeah.
meaning it
Like
could,
before when we were speaking, like
yeah,
in our
in a,
pre-interview.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it could manifest in many, many different ways. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the ways are kind of like known diseases already, but it may not be
Okay.
that exact disease. It could be lupus that's causing it. So, for example, my
Okay.
kidney disease is caused because of lupus.
Okay.
So, had I just had the symptoms of kidney failure, someone
Mm-hmm.
may misdiagnose me because they would say, "Oh, she has
Mm-hmm.
kidney failure," but like, what caused it? Lupus caused it, right?
Okay.
So we were just talking about that, and I was saying like lupus should actually be something that that everyone should know about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it could actually be the cause of so many different things.
Yeah.
And so you're
Oh,
not really treating
also,
the root cause. Yeah.
and something that I wanted to mention just on the podcast, because actually our previous guest, Annie, told me this, and I confirmed this with you, is
Hmm.
that lupus uh, most largely affects Asian women.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a really big thing to know, right? Like
It's
that's a very
huge.
specific
Yeah.
demographic of people like
Yeah.
within our community that is getting affected by this. And number one, nobody knows about it in general, and I'm
Hmm.
sure that like nobody knows that a bunch of like Asian women are suffering from
Yeah.
lupus.
Yeah. It's most prevalent in women or females,
Mm-hmm.
and most prevalent in, well, people of color, but mainly Asians.
Yeah.
And it also is heavily seen in ages from 11 to like 15.
Okay.
That's when people usually get diagnosed with lupus.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, it's a huge thing, and it's good now because I remember laughing about this with you in our pre-interview, how House made lupus a thing,
Right. The
and
TV show House.
the TV show
Yeah.
House, yeah, and
Yeah.
it was funny because I didn't watch it, but someone told me that whenever he couldn't diagnose something, he would say it might be lupus, and I
Right.
laughed because that's exactly, it's true because whatever you can't diagnose, it may be lupus.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was the first time I ever actually heard about, lupus in the media or in,
Right.
popular media, popular culture. And when I
Right.
first heard about that, it was actually really, relieving, and I was excited about it because like we said, lupus wasn't known at all, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even just that small mention of lupus in popular culture kind of put it on people's radar.
You're like, I feel seen. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. And like, let's continue then the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, the only thing that I know about it is obviously kind of through you and through my other friend
Hmm.
Annie. And the way
Hmm.
she describes it is like an autoimmune disease or
Yeah.
like a immune system that is in some ways overactive
Yes.
and is attacking different parts of your body, which is why it
Exactly.
can like manifest in, your skin, your joints, for
Hmm.
you currently your kidneys, and
Hmm.
a million other ways that
Yeah.
are sometimes very hard to diagnose.
Yeah.
Is that kind of an okay, like colloquial way of just kind of clarifying what lupus
Yeah, that's
is?
exactly what it is. It's an autoimmune
Okay.
disease. And again, with the TCM reference, it's basically your body attacking itself. So your body's
Yeah.
at war with itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is super interesting because that's kind of what I have eczema, and that's kind of what
Hmm.
eczema is as well.
Oh.
So like I don't really know what eczema is. That's
No, but
fine.
I remember how bad it was for you. Like, I mean, we've known each other since university, and I remember first year because I was fortunate. I had a single dorm, and
Yeah.
I and
I did too, but just to
oh,
clarify,
oh yeah, you did,
Veronica
yeah.
Veronica and I also know it's very odd that we
we also know each other from university, from first year.
Yeah.
Actually, before I met Annie, and you asked me off camera if on this podcast how much of myself
Hmm.
I would be speaking about,
Hmm.
and I'm currently still pretty unsure about it, but we talked about maybe because I actually also just have really terrible memory, because there's a lot of points in my life where I'm like super depressed, or like I'm just like in a lot of
Mm.
pain, and I think that
Yeah, yeah.
there's something about that in the connection with how memory works. So I actually don't remember uh, kind of our time together really in first year, and
Yeah. Fortunately,
uh,
I do.
yeah. So you share it, because
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm uncomfortable.
But maybe once I like start talking about it, you might recall and then can
Okay.
yeah.
Well, maybe go ahead.
No, but I remember just you would knock on my door early in the morning and be like, "Dude, I can't go to class." And I'm like, and you're like, "Can I just crash here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." And you would just come and I would see just like how horrible eczema was for you. And you would tell me things like it'd be so painful that, you couldn't even wear anything because, just something touching it was like just unbearable or it'd be so itchy or whatever. And you would literally just crash at my place, sleep most of the time because it was probably just too much for you. I would come and bring you food and yeah, and like that was the first time I actually really got to see the extent of eczema and what it could do to people. Um and I remember the whole like sometimes we would never see you come out of your dorm because, you know, and you would talk to me about how insecure it made you feel, like just even the
Yeah.
mental health part of it too. And
For
yeah.
a little bit of context, I've always had eczema, but I moved to university. I moved to Kingston to go to Queen's University, and we moved into dorms first year. And then I'm pretty sure because the dorm is dirty as fuck, just,
Yeah.
they don't clean it, and it's
Also
just old
changing climate
buildings.
and all that stuff.
Yeah, and moving from Vancouver to Toronto, winters
Mhm.
were extremely, extremely cold.
Mhm.
I went from having, I don't know, I don't actually remember how my eczema was before that,
It
but
was
not as
bad.
bad. But I mean, before coming, it was probably not as bad. I don't remember
Oh, yeah,
where,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like I ended up fully having it probably on like 80% of my body. And
Yeah.
it was just, yeah, back then, I don't know if this is appropriate or it's okay to say, but back then I used to call it like burn victim vibes. Like it was just,
Mm.
yeah,
It really
not
was honestly, it was really eye-opening. Like, I still have the image of it in my head. Like,
really.
yeah, I it was
Wow.
really yeah, and it was all over your body.
Yep.
And um and it was probably the stress and everything too, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't like yeah, and looking back, it's just like the stuff we go through just for education. Like it's just crazy, fucking crazy. It's just like, I it's funny too because when I started having kidney failure, I
Hmm.
had a doctor at Sunnybrook who told me she noticed a lot of the cases that she sees in young adults who see
Hmm.
her
Hmm.
are from Queens. Like,
No.
yeah, it's insane. And she personally told me, like, I don't know what's going on there, but a lot of the patients that I see who have kidney problems are from Queens.
When was this? At what time, or like what age is this that you're speaking of, like getting
It was
diagnosed
in
with kidney failure?
2017, so we were
Okay.
done university, but like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was so crazy that she told me that. I had no idea.
That's really sketchy.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And
No,
helping
I just
me.
really feel like, people should know because like I didn't know much about eczema before meeting you, and I still don't know a lot about eczema. I just know that I know someone who has it, and it's quite severe, and it can be really severe and debilitating. And it's just, I feel like, you know, everyone should know about it because I feel like eczema is also one of those things where it's just like, oh, you have eczema. right?
Yeah,
But people
always.
don't know.
Oh, your
Yeah.
skin is a little bit itchy?
Yeah, or like,
Mm.
remember you told
Yeah,
me your
okay.
doctor that when you saw your doctor and he's like, "Are you moisturizing?" And you're just like, "Are you fucking kidding me right now?"
Yeah,
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 and it's just something like that because people don't know just how severe it can get, and
yeah.
I
Well,
feel
you honestly, I I've had the fortune to have like a lot of amazing friends in my life, but not like not a lot of people see me that way or
Mhm,
get to see that at all because it's kind of like
mhm,
really unless you're living with me, which maybe some like my spouse, maybe like
mhm,
or like a previous partner, like nobody sees it because as you said, like I don't come out of my room, right? And
yeah,
I'm very I feel very strongly about being very pleasant to people, which is I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that on my behalf because I still feel very like just a little bit shy about how to be expressing my disability or my chronic illness and but
yeah.
beyond that, thank you for
I hope it
the
was okay,
care.
but yeah,
No, thank you for the care that you extended me at that time. Like
of course.
thank you. That's yeah, I owe it to people like you who I, you know, meet on like throughout my journey in my life
Mhm.
to extend that kindness and I really really appreciate it.
I mean, of course, like it's hard, especially in university when you're away from home and stuff. Like you need to rely on friends, right?
Yeah,
So
I agree.
yeah.
So we kind of touched on kind of the basics as to how lupus affects you, but I kind of
Hmm.
more specifically want to talk about the last couple years leading up to your inevitable kidney transplant and
Hmm.
kind of, you know, stuff beyond that. So can
Hmm.
you I don't know, speak on that a little bit?
For sure, yeah. So for the last 3 or 4 years, I was going through a lot of stuff personally and you know career wise and stuff, and
Mhm.
I also became negligent with my medication. There are some medications that I absolutely hate to love and love to hate. One of them is like the steroid called prednisone. You may have heard of it,
Mhm.
and it's
I
just
think I've taken it. I
it's
think I've been
horrible.
prescribed it
Yeah,
for eczema as well. It's the one
yeah.
that is it the one that is gives you a likely chance for like osteoporosis and like moon face and
Yes,
stuff.
yeah, moon face. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a necessity because honestly, if all else fails, prednisone is there. Prednisone is there.
Okay.
But it also gives you so many side effects. Like
Okay.
it's contradicting too. It could give you like it could make you have cravings, but can also, you know, make you have loss of appetite. It's just like
Okay.
anywhere, right? And
It's a
I
mixed
bet
bag.
you exactly. And I bet you
Okay.
whoever you speak to who has taken prednisone will tell you the same thing, that they hate it.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the medications I was on, and I hated it. And especially as a young female who, you know, I image is a huge thing, right?
Yeah, you want to
And
look
you know,
hot. There's nothing wrong with
I
that.
want to look hot,
Yeah.
exactly, right?
You gonna want to look
Uh,
hot just because you're sick doesn't mean you don't want to look hot. Like, come on.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, especially, and I'll touch more about this, but with modeling too, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I stopped taking it for a while, and that really, really affected me. And then one or two times I forgot to take another medicine, and so it kind of all spiraled. And my kidneys inevitably just were like, nope. Like I'm done.
Bye.
I'm done. Yeah. Yeah.
Shit.
So it was a whole bunch of things. And um yeah, and then I remember I had to go to the ER because I wasn't feeling well, and they were like, dude, your kidneys are just not working well. And
And this was
after
like three
that,
or 4 years ago,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, got it.
And that's when I landed myself in Sunnybrook. I met an amazing nephrology team there, run by
Hmm.
Dr. Michelle
Hmm.
Ladenowicz. She's amazing, and I believe she has a all female team, which is fucking
And
amazing.
Sunnybrook is a clinic, a hospital.
It's
What is
it's
this place?
Sunnybrook is a health. and medical research place, but also has a hospital.
Okay. And
But they're mainly
located
focused
in
in North
Ontario,
York,
right?
Ontario. Yeah, North York,
In North
Toronto.
York.
Yeah,
Got
yeah.
it, got it, got it.
And but yeah, she has an amazing team, and we tried to kind of revive it, you know, fix the kidney kind of thing, but it didn't work. I went through chemotherapy. I went through a whole ton of like cocktails of drugs, and it just didn't work. And so they were like, dude, you most likely need dialysis. And
Okay.
obviously that was devastating to hear. And but you just kind of soldier on, and you just be like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, okay. And you have a different you have different types of dialysis to choose from. And the most, I guess, appealing to people in that situation is peritoneal dialysis, or PD dialysis. And
Okay.
that's just something they put kind of like a tube in your peritoneal cavity,
Okay.
and it like hangs out from your abdomen. You clean your peritoneal cavity. So it's not cleaning your blood, it's just
Mm-hmm.
cleaning your stomach area, abdomen area.
Can
Um,
I ask a couple questions?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, what is the purpose of dialysis? Why did you like what is dialysis and like why did you need it?
Okay.
And what is the peritoneal cavity?
Yeah, so dialysis, it acts as a support for your kidneys, because your kidneys are used to filter the toxins in your body, amongst
Got it.
a bunch of other things that it
Right,
does.
right.
Like, it regulates a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my kidneys were failing, so it wasn't able to filter toxins in my body.
Got it.
So we always kind of check this number for creatinine. Creatinine is like the toxic in your body, and
Okay.
the normal range for now, it's different in every country. Like, the way they calculate it is different. In
Mm-hmm.
Canada, we calculate it by the hundreds, so the normal
Okay.
range is 100 and below. When
Okay.
I first got diagnosed, it was around 200, 300, and it went all the way up to 800. That was pre-dialysis.
That's
Yeah.
800% higher than appropriate.
Yes,
That's not
exactly.
okay.
No, it's not okay. So I needed dialysis, and so what the peritoneal cavity is basically your whole abdomen below kind of your chest area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the space around your stomach and your intestines and all that stuff. And there's a lot of
Okay.
space in there. So yeah, so they put this tube in you, and they're really considerate. They put it in a spot where you will be able to hide it with your pants and stuff like that. And every night I would be hooked up to this machine, and it's different for everyone, but I had kind of like a 9-hour regimen. So I was able to do it while I was sleeping. And basically, you have a solution that kind of pumps into your system, sits there for a few
Mm-hmm.
hours. They take it out again via the machine, and that's all your
Mm-hmm.
toxins just coming out with a solution. That goes on for about 3 or 4 cycles during the night.
So 9 hours a day,
9 hours, yeah,
every day,
every day, yeah.
every single day,
Every single fucking day, yeah. But it was
every
it was
single day.
nice, like, because I was able to do it at night, so it was basically while I was
Mm-hmm.
sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it did also affect kind of my day-to-day activities as well, because if I wanted to do something early in the morning or something, I would have to really time it well. And I also had to set up the machine myself. So I remember, dragging my feet sometimes at night, because, I'd be chilling with my family, we'd be watching something, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to go set up this machine. And then I
Yeah.
go and I have to do this thing, and then,
Yeah.
and even my family, like, it would affect them too, because, they would have to accommodate to me and my schedule as well, because I had to do this
Mm-hmm.
every night, right? But
Mm-hmm.
on the other hand, it gave me some freedom too. Like, I was able to travel with it. I was able to, um, I did a modeling camp with it. Like, I went to New York to see
Wow.
Coco Rocha and do her modeling camp with it. So it was liberating
Wow.
too. And I was able to, once I got the hang of it, I was able to kind of just do it myself. So it wasn't that bad. But
Can you
then,
explain what the process of traveling while needing dialysis is like?
yeah, Very well, in Canada, we're very fortunate. And throughout this whole journey, I realized just how fortunate we are in Canada, compared to other countries. But
Mm-hmm.
Canada allows you, or in Ontario, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
allows you to travel within Canada twice free and once in America free. And what they do is, because you have so many bags and they're huge, they're boxes, they're really heavy. They're like
Whoa. Like
two,
suitcases?
no, they're like boxes and cases
Okay.
of solution.
Mm-hmm.
And every day, every month, they would ship like 30, 40 boxes to me every month, right? Other boxes for other things, equipment that you need. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of this has to be shipped to wherever you're going to.
Okay.
And
So a
all
lot of pre-planning for
a
just every
lot,
day, but
a lot.
also especially with traveling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
And
if
very
you're,
vital because literally this is washing the toxins out of
yeah, this
your
is my lifeline,
body.
basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you would have to give 3 6 months of notice if you want to go internationally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but again, I didn't complain. But um 2 2 years after, it started failing, peritoneal dialysis started failing, and my
Yeah.
toxins were just climbing up again, and it reached like 1,000 something at some point. And when it got really critical, I went into the hospital emergency, and my creatinine was not even like they couldn't even calculate it. It was that high. It just said 2,500 plus.
How does that much toxin in your body make you feel?
It
Because I
makes,
know that it's a bad number or whatever, but also
yeah.
like how do you feel?
Well, essentially, my doctor was like, you could have died at home. Like it. So I felt like absolute shit. So it starts shutting down your whole body, basically, right? So on top of how it makes you feel, like the creatinine in itself, it made me feel tired. It made me feel, I was like swollen. I was accumulating fluids because I was no
Okay.
longer urinating, and I had no appetite. My hair was falling out. Like it was just that stuff. But on top of that,
You
it
were no
makes,
longer urinating?
no.
How do you
That's why all the toxins were kind of building in my body, because I
right,
had no way of releasing them,
right. Because
right?
peeing is excreting, of course.
Yeah,
What am I saying?
toxins.
Peeing is excreting toxins. Right, right,
Yeah,
right. Sorry, my
exactly,
bad.
exactly. Fortunately, I
Mhm.
was still able to make bowel movements,
Okay.
but that's like not enough, right? So
No.
yeah, and I literally would be in my bed day in and day out, and eventually I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to go into the hospital. And yeah, it was a horrible, horrible experience, because a lot, my team at that time, my peritoneal dialysis team, I felt I was being not listened to, and I was really, really angry because I told my nurse, listen, I don't feel well, and she just texts me, and she's like, could it be because of this? Which was like, are you eating too much vegetables or something like that? And I was
Okay.
like,
I
what?
don't know. This
I
seems
know.
pretty bad.
But then now I look back, and it's like, it could also be because they don't have experience with someone who has kidney failure, but caused by lupus.
Okay.
Because they only deal with kidney failure, right?
Okay.
And I think that is cause for conversation, because obviously there are many, many different reasons why someone has kidney disease. One, the
Uh-huh.
most prevalent in that center that I found was because of diabetes.
Uh-huh.
But now, because we know that there are so many different reasons, I
Mhm.
think nurses and doctors should be more trained to
And
deal
the
with
different
situations like this.
patterns.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the
yeah,
different patterns of how kidney failure or just things around the kidney can show up kind of thing, right?
exactly,
Got
exactly.
it. Got it.
But yeah, so since my creatinine was so high, they were like, we have to do immediate hemodialysis, which is filtering the blood, which
Right.
gives more clearance. It's more invasive.
Yeah.
And I had to do this dialysis at a center. I couldn't do it by myself. Well, you can, but I don't want to. You, I had to go 3 times a week, 4 hours a day, and I just lie there, and they kind of hook me up, and they to this machine, and it clears my blood. And And one thing I think people should know is that dialysis is only supporting your kidneys. It doesn't do everything the kidney should do. So
Okay.
even though yeah, it's helping you filter out toxins, my creatinine would be at like 1,000 something if I didn't do dialysis. Dialysis dropped it to 600. So I still had a bunch of toxins in my body.
So you're
Yeah.
still 600% over the acceptable limit of
Yes.
100 for normal people, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not like a solution.
Yeah.
It's just something to help you,
Right.
which is why I was on the list for a transplant.
How long were you
So
on a list for?
I was on the list. So when you start in Ontario, when you start dialysis, you get on the list.
Okay.
So I was on the list for about 3 years, so 2 years and
Wow.
8 months.
Right.
And it also depends on, this is for a deceased donor.
Uh-huh.
And it also depends on your blood type. So my blood type is A positive.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the average amount of wait time for a deceased donor would be 5 to 7 years.
Wow.
People with,
Okay.
I think, blood type like O or whatever is like 10 plus years. So yeah. Yeah, there are also many, many other factors that go into this point system that they have, which I'm not fully equipped to. Like, I know age is a thing as well.
Like a point system as to how urgent or how these kidneys of deceased people get allocated,
Yes.
right? Or get
Yeah.
like given out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you
Sorry.
get one, you get one.
Everybody gets a kidney. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. 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 So age is a thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that also made me feel really, really guilty about that too, because it's like, why am I different compared to, an elderly man who needs a kidney, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I know how it feels to not have it. And
Yeah.
some people die doing dialysis, right? Like, they never
Yeah.
get the chance. And I had a grandmother who was just doing dialysis, and she passed away, right?
Yeah.
And so there is that guilt factor also.
Yeah.
But when you go through the transplant workup, you have to do a bunch of tests. You get tested for mental health issues. You get tested for, diabetes, for, like stress tests, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It can take a while, especially if they want you to go back and do some other tests.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately for me, like, I was told once I finished all my workup that it would be about 6 to 8 months wait for me. And literally, I would think a month later after I finished it, I got the call. And it was so funny because I had just finished dialysis when I got the call. And they're
Wait,
like, hey,
I'm a little bit confused. So you get on the transplant list or a
mhm,
waiting list the moment you start dialysis.
mhm,
And what are you speaking about right now? So like there's a workup that happens. What is this wait
yes,
time? What are we
yes.
speaking about right now?
So while you're on this wait list for a deceased donor, you also have
Uh-huh.
the chance to find a living donor as well, right?
Okay. Okay.
And that will be faster. But throughout this whole process, they need to know if your body can accept a transplant,
Of
right? You can't
course.
just like
Uh-huh.
get a transplant. If they find that, you are not really taking care of your body, your lifestyle isn't great, or your
Mm-hmm.
mental health isn't that great, they will reject you. But rejection doesn't mean like you can never do it ever. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you need to make some adjustments, and
Okay.
we'll come back and we'll assess you again.
Mm-hmm. So
And these tests,
when was it for you that you got to do this workup with these
so
tests?
almost immediately when I started dialysis, it can take months because obviously there are other people who are taking this test as well, and they have to accommodate to
Okay.
other people and
Okay.
stuff and such. And then if you have a living donor, she also or he also has to do a test as well to see if they're
Mm-hmm.
an eligible candidate to give you a kidney. So
Mm-hmm.
it can actually take a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but throughout all this, you're doing dialysis, right? So
Right.
yeah, and then
Okay.
oh my god, and then COVID was a thing. So
Right. Okay. So you were doing dialysis and started doing dialysis about 3 or 4 years ago because of a
mhm,
multitude of reasons and medicine's not working and just your kidney just no longer deciding that it wants to work the way it quote unquote
right,
should work,
right,
and then you go on dialysis, of one sort, and then that one didn't work out, and you had to
Mm-hmm.
do a more intrusive one. I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's what you would say. And
Mm-hmm.
then that leads us up to you, I guess, at some point finding a kidney. And
Yeah.
when was that? How was that? How was the I don't know, how was getting a new kidney?
Yeah, so because I also had a living donor, my living donor, she's based in the States.
Okay.
So because of COVID, it was very, very hard for her to come over here because she would have to do all her pre-transplant workup here in Toronto. Like she could
Mhm.
not do it in America.
Mhm.
And so it was very hard to get her over here to do it. And that process was taking a while. But when I got the call, I was
Mhm.
conflicted because obviously having a living donor is better in terms of how long the kidney will last for on average.
Mhm.
On average, a deceased kidney lasts for, I think, 15 years, but a living donor would last maybe 5 years more than that, right? So,
It's
but that
so
was,
it's so interesting and like kind of bizarre to get like definite timelines
yeah, yeah,
on your organs or have to think about them that way. I feel like a lot of
yeah,
people, like me included, have the privilege of not having to think about our
yeah.
bodies in that way or have such like concrete timelines and
Right, yeah, yeah. I mean, these are just, yeah, they're just like on average, right?
yeah.
There are so many cases that people are thriving with kidneys that have lasted for 30 years. Obviously, there are exceptions to things.
Mhm.
But in my head, in my mind, I was so adamant on the living donor, right? Because it's not every day when you come across someone who's willing to give you a kidney,
Yeah. And it's a
right?
match,
And
right?
it's a match. Yeah, yeah,
When did you get this
exactly.
call? You said like COVID, so I'm assuming it
Right.
was in 2020, but when did you get this call?
So I actually got this call in June of 2021. So
June of 2021.
Yeah,
Okay.
June 4th of 2021.
Okay. So
Um,
that's this year.
yeah,
That's how many months ago?
it's October now. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
October. Yeah,
4 months ago.
so about 4 months ago. Yeah, and I got the transplant the next day. So yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and yeah, so it was a really big decision. I had to jump on a call with my family because I was living away from them at that point, and my
Mhm.
godfather was there. We were all just on this conference call with the surgeon and the
Mhm.
person who knew more about this kidney.
Mhm.
Um, and he was like, the surgeon was like, "This is, I think, in my opinion, a really good match for you. It's not every day that we find a kidney like this for someone."
Mhm.
And so because of the whole conversation we had, and I spoke to my living donor as well, like, hey, this is the situation, and she was so elated, and we went for it, and we literally had less than, I would say, 5 hours to make a decision and go to the
Okay.
hospital.
Okay.
So
But she was at that time in the US, so like
yes,
logistically she had to come over and kind of
yes.
okay.
Yeah. So she would, if she were going to go through all of that, she would have had to come over, do her tests first, and that doesn't even guarantee that she could be my donor. She just has
Right.
to do the test first, right?
Okay.
So, yeah. So when we made the decision, we did it, and before you get there, they have to do another bunch of tests, especially the COVID test now.
Mhm.
And then I stayed there overnight. And even when they say they have a potential kidney for you, it could also just mean, yeah, like it won't work. Because when they actually look at the kidney and they really take a look at it, they might see something that is off, or, it might not be what they expected, or when they do some tests on it, it's actually something came up. So it's also, you're still just waiting at the hospital, but it's not definite until you actually put the kidney into your body and they sew you up and you're done. Yeah. So
I'm
that
just
whole,
hold wait, can we just take a pause even to this point? Like there's so many points in which you're like, yeah, my toxicity was like super high and like could definitely have died and like this point could have definitely have died. Like
yeah,
this is something that causes a lot of pre-planning. Like I needed to decide if I could
digest.
have a
Yeah.
yeah, just to hold space for you to like that's a lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
just kind of wanting to hold space and give you that like
Thank you.
recognition, you know,
Yeah.
like
You're right. Like, and now that you mention it, I don't even think we ever even sat down and processed just how crazy this whole ride was. Like, we just went from situation to situation to situation.
yeah, because there's no time.
There's no
Where is
time.
there time for
Yeah,
you to like even process or have feelings about this? Decisions need to be
exactly.
made, right? Like
Exactly.
it's just not possible. It doesn't feel possible in the moment,
Exactly. Exactly. And
right?
coming from an Asian background, especially a Chinese background, where emotions and feelings aren't really discussed. We don't really talk about this with our
Which is
family
so
or our
wild.
parents,
Yeah.
right? And that was really difficult to navigate too as a Canadian with Chinese Filipino descent,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, that whole emotional journey as well, on top of that physical journey, was a lot,
Mhm.
like you mentioned. And now that we're taking a breather, I realized just um, how how crazy that whole these 3 years have been. And even when I talk about it, I say, "Oh yeah, for the past 3 years," and to me, it felt like an eternity that I've been in
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What kind of yeah, what kind of like mental health support was happening in this time or
Hmm.
specifically when you were getting your transplant?
Hmm.
Because it's something
Um,
that doesn't often get talked about often in tandem with like people who are severely like physically ill.
right.
Like it's just there's does for some reason there doesn't seem like a consideration to make sure that we're emotionally doing okay as well, even
Yeah.
though, you
Emotionally
know,
supported. Yeah.
yeah,
Mentally supported. Yeah.
you are going through some like fucking pretty traumatic shit, you know, like just I just it's just we just kind of I understand you because obviously we're culturally similar,
Hmm.
but it is kind of like the fact that you can even just go like, yeah, just almost died, like is just really indicative of like how much stuff we have to go through and sometimes never have the space to fully process or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the mental health and emotional health on this journey was heavily neglected, um, and especially by the medical institution. And I'm very lucky to have, like you said, friends and family who support me on that aspect as well.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also very hard, and I can understand this. It's very hard for an outsider to really relate to what I'm going through and really understand what I'm going through. And
Sure.
they just don't know how to support someone like this at that time. And I really get that. Um, but
I don't know,
um,
people, just for people listening, you can always ask. Asking
yes,
helps, you know what I mean? When you don't know.
exactly.
I know that
Exactly.
sometimes people who are going through stuff also don't know, but
Yeah,
a good place to start in supporting your loved ones is literally just asking,
is asking. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
And, I was faced with many, many instances where I would tell someone, yeah, I'm going through this, and they would just not say anything. And it's like, ooh, this is awkward. Or, they would say, they would do the go to, line, get well soon, or I hope you feel better soon. And it's
Dope.
like,
I have a chronic illness. Not gonna happen.
exactly. And also, like, yeah, it's a little more than just get well soon, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But one I remember one time when I was telling you that when my creatinine was like 2500 plus, and I was not, like, I could have died. Um, there was one point where also I was in the hospital during COVID, and no one is allowed to really visit you at that time. So going through
Hmm.
this by yourself and like going through everything that they're trying to throw at you is really overwhelming.
Hmm.
And there was a point where I was just so overwhelmed that I didn't want to see anyone. And I was suicidal. Like, I wanted to kill myself in the hospital.
Okay.
And the nurse comes in and she sees me crying, and she's like, your mom's downstairs. Like, I'm like, I don't want to see her. And she's like, what's happening? Why are you crying? I was like, I
Mhm.
need to see a psychologist or a
Mhm.
psychiatrist, like whatever. I need to see a counselor, someone. And she's like,
Mhm.
okay, I'll call them. And they never came. And it's like crazy to me because if you say my ass is hurting, someone will come and see your ass. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like when it's about mental health, it's like nothing happens. And it's crazy that you have this team of people who are there to help you physically. But
Yeah.
we don't think that we should maybe add the mental health aspect to it.
Yeah.
That maybe like yeah, you have a social worker, but they're not really there to help you with your mental health. They can be there to
Yeah.
hear how you're doing, but they're not
Mhm.
gonna, you know,
That's not
really
their job.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? So it's just crazy for me that we still at this age cannot even realize that we need a support this in this way, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and there were many, many times when I feel guilty. I felt like a burden to my family. And, you know, I was the cause of their upset. I was the cause of the stress in the family. It
Yeah.
definitely caused strains in the relationship with my friends, my family. I
Mhm.
didn't want to see anyone. Like in that aspect,
Mhm.
I can relate to you when you didn't want to come out of your room,
Yeah.
um, you know, to see people, right? Like it's the
Mhm.
same. Like I don't want, you know, I don't want to socialize, right?
Mhm.
Um, but no one really, I noticed, really ever checked in with me. Like they were just like, "How do you feel today? Like how you know, do you feel sick
Like
or
body
whatever?"
wise, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Got
No one
it.
really checked in about like how are you feeling today, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's such a when you say that, that actually sounds like such a relatable story when I think back on. So my eczema was definitely more severe as a kid, or
mhm,
and it's just like it would just be like, yeah, how's your skin doing? I think that's
mhm.
often what people the first thing people would
Right,
ask me, and I don't know if
right.
that's also just like a cultural thing.
Mhm,
Um but I don't ever remember anyone asking me how I was emotionally doing or emotionally coping with whatever we were coping with. And
exactly.
I hope we're in 2021 a little bit better about doing that with each other, you know of course, especially for people with disabilities and chronic illness and stuff like that, but just with people in general, just kind of like, I
It
think
was
something that I
so
like to say is like, how is your heart?
oh, that's nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
It was so interesting because I was just talking to a family friend yesterday,
Mhm.
um, and he was saying, you know, yeah, we recognize mental health, we recognize that it's a thing, but even now in, you know, businesses and stuff, they're just like, you know, if you say, you know, I need to take a leave of absence because I have depression, they're just like,
Mhm.
yeah, just leave, right? They want nothing to do with you. They just want, they're like, we don't deal with that. Someone else does that, so just leave. You know, no one really
Mhm.
ever says something substantial, or no one really helps you in that way, right?
I don't
So
think people I really don't think people know how to talk to or deal with individuals who are continually sick.
that's such a good statement. Yeah,
I don't think people know what to do with us.
yeah,
Like,
that's
because they're going to ask us, and every time they ask us, we're still sick. And then they get really awkward about it.
yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and and yeah, I never really thought about it that way, but you're so right. I feel like that culture really needs to change, which is why
Yeah.
it's so amazing that you are creating this podcast because you're giving an outlet for people like us, right, to
Just a
say
vent.
how
Just say your shit. Just vent it. Yeah.
exactly.
We briefly mentioned in the beginning, and you also mentioned a little bit that you did a bit of modeling.
Hmm.
And I wanted to ask you what your experience with modeling was. And I don't know how I phrased it before, but if like modeling was accepting, if the modeling industry was supportive and accepting of you as a person, with lupus, or you as like a person of color as well, right? Like
Oh, yeah,
many
yeah.
multitudes, right?
Yeah. So modeling had its ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it did give me confidence for sure. It made me feel good in my skin, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, ashamed of it as well because, for example, I have stretch marks on my arms and my abdomen from just like different therapies that I had to go through while I was a child. I was always afraid of showing these stretch marks because I felt like I'm not perfect
Mm-hmm.
enough. And then therefore that would affect, my performance, and then it would affect my career as a model.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a very superficial industry as well, I think. It's so I always try to overcompensate, and I always try to I would try to be as fit as possible because then if they looked at my skin, they're like, oh, she has these stretch marks, but at least she's got abs, or at least she's toned or something, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I never really felt I was able to be accepted fully for who I am. And I was even afraid to tell people sometimes that I had lupus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I like, as long as they may not even know what lupus is, but if they hear I have this or I'm suffering from this, they're like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I want to deal with someone like that, right?
Right. There's
Um,
always that fear, right?
yeah. Even in any other kind of career, I think it's always scary to tell an employer, hey, I'm dealing with this, because one,
Yeah.
they might feel sorry for you and they might treat you differently, or another thing might be like they just don't want to deal with someone like that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
yeah.
agree. Um, how do you feel? This is, I guess, like a more metaphysical question, but how do you
Hmm.
feel? How do you feel like people see you? Or how do you feel like lupus has limited the way people have seen you?
Okay, so a lot of it may be in my own head or my own belief of how people see me, and it could also be a fear. From what I know about talking to people, a lot of people don't see anything when they see me. They just see like a regular person just doing their own thing, and it's good and bad in its own way.
Well, because that's almost like the I don't see color argument, right? Because it's kind of
Yeah,
like, yeah, you are normal, but like quote unquote normal, but you are also a person that is dealing with their health. So, like, it's not good to discriminate against you for being this, like for having this, but it's also not great to ignore
yeah,
that you have this either, right? Like
yeah.
there
And
needs to be
but it also puts that person in a really difficult position, which is why, I can understand why people are awkward and stuff. But I always have this fear that people will treat me differently in the way where they will baby me, or they'll feel sorry for me, or they will see that I'm weaker than others, or I can't do things, or they'll just think that I'm different and treat me differently. Like I was having this argument today actually with my godfather about how I was so upset that he told his friends about my condition without telling me,
mhm,
or without asking for my permission, so to
right.
speak. And
Mhm.
he just didn't really understand why I was so upset. And I
Mhm.
told him that it was because you took that right away from me to control how I want to be perceived by
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
And here I am trying to, hide it in a way. And I guess people can argue either like why should you have to hide it? But it's like
Right.
I
Hey, you
I
get to
had the
do or feel however,
exactly,
or
exactly. I
however
have a
you're ready,
choice.
right?
Exactly. I have a
Yeah.
choice to tell people or show people my condition or not. And I didn't know these people, right? And so after all this conversation with him, I guess he then realized why I was so upset about it. And
Mhm.
I know that it came from a good place, but it was just consideration that I was asking for. But yeah, he's like, no, they don't see you as a wounded puppy or whatever. They just see you as a normal person.
But it's just so I feel like there needs to be something in between. It's kind of like what is number one, what is a normal person? And it's kind of like, what is the idea
Exactly.
of getting treated differently, right? No, like you
Exactly.
actually do kind of have to treat people with different like access needs differently, and access needs being just essentially different considerations for different people who might like, for example, something that is an access need that I have is that my friends sometimes before we go out they tell me how long the walk is or how long
Mm,
we might be walking for because I can't walk for very long,
that's yeah.
like that
That's
that is
an
being.
that's a consideration that is warranted, right?
Yeah, right? So
Yeah.
like there needs to be, I feel like there needs to be an in between normal, whatever normal person is, which I feel like is pretty fucking ableist, and pity. Like,
Thank you.
like there needs,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that it's kind of and
Yeah.
yeah, and neither is a compliment in some ways, you know?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like even just creating that space that I feel comfortable to tell you, okay, listen, I can't do this right now because
Yeah.
just creating that space. You don't have to always constantly be like, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? Just
Yeah.
like allowing me to tell you whenever I'm not okay,
Yeah.
right?
And have the
Um,
agency to do that.
yeah.
And as a follow-up question, how do you want to be seen, or when
Hmm.
have you felt really cared for or really seen by like somebody else?
That's actually a really good question and something I think I'm still learning. But most of all, yeah, I don't really know how I want to be seen actually,
Fair.
because like you said, there's that balance where I want to be seen as quote unquote normal,
Hmm.
but also want to be understood that I have this condition and I may not be able to be on par every single day.
But
But
on par is a standard that was created by
yeah,
people that are not
you're
like
right.
us, right? Or
You're
just
right.
just ableist as fuck.
Yes.
Like what does that
Yeah.
even mean? It's so arbitrary.
Yeah. It's yeah. It's like it's either you make it or you get left behind, that kind of thing, right? But
Yeah, it's
um
a scary feeling.
yeah, I guess a way that I was um felt like I was seen or heard was when when I'm able to have a conversation with people and they actually like that feeling when you're being heard, right?
Yeah.
And understood,
Hmm.
as opposed to just being listened to.
Hmm.
And yeah, yeah. I actually don't know. I'm still struggling with that part. So
Okay. Continuous journey. Just
yeah.
thought I would throw it out there. But yeah, I think that that's also, it's also a very complicated thing for us, or possibly for you. I don't want to speak for you, but I think for me, you spend so much time hiding, right? Or I spent so much
Yeah.
time hiding. And I don't know where you are in your journey with yourself, or, but
Mhm.
it took me a long time before I even wanted to be who I always knew I was, or
Mm.
in that idea of like the things that I dealt with, right?
Mhm.
Because, and which is why I said that I felt uncomfortable, and thank you again for speaking on my behalf about like some of my eczema
Of
stuff,
course,
because
of
it's
course.
something that we deal with a lot and then we just kind of have to deal with, but we don't really know how to talk about. So like
Yeah.
how we want to be seen, yeah, can be a very, I think, a very complicated question, and
Yeah.
something I hope you find, and I hope you find strength in it at
Thank
some
you.
point, because
Thank you.
I see you. Yeah. I think this is where we're gonna end the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just gonna record this part as well, just in case it's something that might be useful for other people. But after such a large conversation about a lot of like, you spent a lot of energy revealing a lot of like personal things. Like I've had the
Mhm.
privilege to listen to a lot of like personal things, and I um want to just take the space to like check in and see if you're okay, and see if there's anything that we can be doing to kind of leave this conversation here. You know what I mean? Like you have to go on and do your day. And I wanted to like in some way symbolically close this for you, so you don't have to process or feel anything that you don't want to be feeling,
Mhm.
that you did kind of muster up
Mhm.
to have this conversation here. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we don't really take the time to really recognize is like how we feel about situations and how we feel in the moment. And after you saying this, I realized, yeah, like I'm I'm not traumatized by it, but I'm shaken for sure because, my hands are sweaty, my feet are cold.
From doing this podcast.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for a while I was like kind of like shaking as well because you're right, living through it, speaking about it and living through it again is a whole it's like an experience, like experiencing it again, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know, would it be helpful if we both put our hands on our hearts and just do
Sure.
a couple breaths and just
Maybe
like
sit up properly.
just
Okay.
just acknowledging the power and the strength that you have to come forward with this vulnerability. Um, thank yourself for showing up for you. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah.
This doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for anyone else. But I'm glad that you're doing this for you, or you feel like this is
Thank
something
you.
that you're doing this for you.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that the rest of your day will be nice and calm and good, and whatever you might be searching for today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then let's close this conversation because this is what we needed to do today. And if you don't want to, you don't have to process this anymore for the rest of the day or for whenever you want to. And you only have to open it back up whenever you feel like it. And we're going to take 3 deep breaths. How about that?
Sure.
Okay. Cool, dude.
That was good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you've made it all the way to the end of this episode, I sincerely thank you for listening. It was a bit of a longer episode, but hey, I'm host, creator, and editor, so I do what I want. I'm sending you any extra kindness you might need in your body and mind today, and I'll catch you at the next episode.